Down but not out. The Canucks find a way to grind out a 4-3 shootout win in Jersey. Wasn't pretty, but the 2 points count all the same. Let's break it down. This is Rink Wide Vancouver. And we welcome you inside the Rink Wide Vancouver studios on a night that saw the Vancouver Canucks push from behind late in the hockey game, just as they did in St. Louis the other night. They lost that one in overtime, but they find a way to pick up the victory in a shootout. The Canucks defeat the New Jersey Devils by a score of 4-3. It is Rink Wide Vancouver. It's a presentation of Bet365. I'm Jeff. He is Irf. And we got a lot to talk about. Didn't feel like we were going to as this game unfolded. Slow build. We've seen that a lot from the Vancouver Canucks throughout the season, but another frantic third period. And this time they get it right. And so they're 1-1-1 now. 3 games halfway through this 6-game road trip. Yeah, we've got our thoughts. We'll certainly pass them along to you, but we want to hear from you as well. You, the listeners, the viewers. Key contributors to Rink Wide Vancouver. So hit us up on our feedback channels and in the YouTube live chat. You can bring it with a super chat as well. Our charity partner this season, the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. Kid comes through, a little stick twirl before he picks up the puck at center ice on the shootout. And Irv, he made no mistake. Nice night for Jonathan Lecker-Mackey. A regulation time goal, his 3rd of the season, 3rd in the NHL, and then looking like a big-time sniper to seal the deal in the shootout. Yeah,
Jacob Markstrom's going to need a new hockey stick after that one. Jonathan Lecker-Mackey with the stick twirl. That's confidence. That is knowing the puck is going in the back of the net before you even get it. So I see Wyatt, the Stanchion posting that he's going to sell a lot of jerseys in this city if he keeps doing things like that, and I would tend to agree. So great stuff from Jonathan Lecker-Mackey. But in an overall, I know we're going to get into it, but pretty frustrating game the way that things ended in New York for the Vancouver Canucks. You lose 2 players. This might be one of their most impressive. When you look at it, of what they had to go through, the adversity that they went through, you didn't know what you were going to get from Thatcher Demko, who was going to step up in this hockey game. You end up grinding one out, going all the way through it. Call it a pretty gutsy win in New Jersey.
Well, I mean, we sat here in the studio watching, and I leaned at you and I said, like, who are you going to go with in the shootout? Like, no Elias Pettersson. Nils Höglander generally isn't a shootout shooter. But, you know, right now, this is a short-staffed team. Let's face it. Their hands are tied with who they've got. Jake DeBrusk looked like the goal scorer that he is. Came in with speed, opened the scoring there. Connor Garland was next up. Pius Suter, who was credited with the tying goal, and we'll see if it stays that way. Scramble in front. I thought DeBrusk got it. I thought maybe it bounced in off Connor Garland, whatever. The Canucks scored with 36 seconds left to force overtime. Nothing doing in OT, but man, some chances, traded chances both ways. Great saves at both ends of the ice, and then it got to the shootout. DeBrusk, Garland, Suter, and Jonathan Lecker-Mackey, he wins it for the Vancouver Canucks. So 4-3 is the final. The Vancouver Canucks pick up their 33rd win of the season, 33-26-12. That's good for 78 points. So for the time being, they move back in front of the Calgary Flames. Flames have a couple of games in hand. Of course, they're not trying to catch the Calgary Flames. You have to leapfrog the Flames, which they have done for the moment. But St. Louis still sitting there, 81 points. This is one of the games in hand that the Canucks had on the Blues. So they're back within 3 now and 11 games remaining. It's still a steep climb for the Vancouver Canucks, but they need wins, and they found a way to get one after squandering one in St. Louis the other night when they did well to force overtime. And then we know what happened against the Rangers with the wide shot discrepancy, but just couldn't put the New York Rangers away. I sort of had similar feelings as this game unfolded. Canucks opened the scoring in the first period, a 1-0 lead to the second. They had power play opportunities that they didn't do anything with, and I thought, don't leave the Devils hanging around. Extend that lead. They couldn't do it. Timo Meier got his first of 2 on a second period power play, a couple of whacks. Second one found Thatcher Demko had opened up a little bit. Puck bounces through the pads and into the net. And, of course, Thatcher Demko, one of the key storylines in this hockey game, and we'll certainly drill down further on his night. But, you know, they go to the third period in a 1-1 tie, and twice the Canucks find themselves trailing. And so it sort of felt a lot like that St. Louis game the other night. You have to give them credit.
Yep.
Look, I don't know where this is going to go. The math certainly doesn't work in their favor here, but there is no quitting the guys that put on the uniform on a nightly basis. And I'm kind of laughing to myself now because they're 8-12 in games that have gone beyond regulation time. The overtime record stinks. But somehow they're 3-1 in shootouts. That's the big downfall this season, is they haven't been able to survive overtime to get to the skills competition.
Exactly. And in that skills competition, you have guys like Lekkerimaki are able to go and do the things that he does, obviously, that we see it. But yeah, I think that when you look at it, you mentioned the guys being able to go put on the jerseys are going to be no quit, no compete in this team. And I guess that's the way that they're going to sell it. You mentioned the math doesn't really work in their favor. They've got a couple games in hand on some teams that they're on the St. Louis Blues of who they're chasing. It's going to be that message for the rest of the way. One game at a time, one shift at a time. Speaking of shifts, Quinn Hughes had a lot of them. But yeah, and I think from the outset, I talked to you earlier in the day, and when we found out that last night it was going to be Thatcher Demko making his start, I didn't really know what to expect from the goalie. There was thoughts that he wanted to play this game because he knew how much the Canucks needed him. He wanted to be a part of the solution, especially with Elias Pettersson going down and Nils Höglander going down and everything that's been going on. And he went in and played a terrific hockey game.
His save off Paul Cotter in overtime.
Oh, my God.
Spectacular. And then he stares down 3 of the 4 Devils. Jesper Bratt with a nifty backhand to beat him in the shootout, but otherwise stops Cotter, stops Timo Meier, who had scored twice, and the Devils go with Luke Hughes. I wondered how deep you'd have to go before we saw Quinn Hughes, and I can't imagine it was going to be a whole lot deeper. We'll never know. But honestly, how would the legend of Quinn Hughes have grown in this market had he scored on that breakaway in overtime?
Oh, the way that he cut through the middle of the ice, too, and just split the defenders. Look, the Quinn Hughes legend, we know how great it is. The broadcast definitely, showed a lot of Quinn Hughes and were, gushing about him. There's people on X right now that are, that watch the game on the East Coast that are tweeting about Quinn Hughes right now because they don't see him much. But yeah, I think that, we know, everyone that watches this show knows how good he is. Everyone that, supports Rink Wide and that support the Vancouver Canucks know what a remarkable talent Quinn Hughes is. There is no one except this guy that takes his team into the fight every single night. If they're going to do this and they're going to do this dance, this dude's going to play 30 minutes the rest of the way, every single night.
They had him up at 32-13. They have audited the ice time. It looks like they've taken a shift away somewhere. 31-38, though, which is still a career high in the regular season for Quinn Hughes. And this guy's been at it for a while now in the National Hockey League, up over 400 games, has never played more than he did against his brother at the Prudential Center in New Jersey, gets an assist on the tying goal, played 11 and a half minutes of the third period and 3:20 of the overtime period. So barely taking shifts off. And after setting the fastest speed burst in the National Hockey League the other day in New York, I'm curious to see what he clocked in at as he jumped up into the rush and ultimately separated himself. It's like he found turbo boosters here on this road trip. When you think at the end of the season, playing through all sorts of injuries, playing basically half a game every night, and still has the energy to separate the way that he did in overtime. Would have been phenomenal. Jacob Markstrom made a nice save there. And then at the death, Lekkerimaki takes the pass from Jake DeBrusk, and a really good look. Another opportunity denied, and so they went to the shootout, and ultimately the Canucks end up winning this hockey game. So, yeah, they're 8-12. They've still left 12 bonus points on the table. They've collected 8 now. They have seen a lot of overtime periods as this season has gone along. Let's get to the 3 stars. They're brought to you by Greta Bar YVR, and that'll just allow us to continue to keep talking about Quinn Hughes here because, he wasn't the most prominent in terms of guys on the stat sheet, but just in the leadership, the will, the determination, he was everything again for the Vancouver Canucks. Just as he was in New York, it was a shame that the Canucks, it was almost criminal that they lost, given the effort of Quinn Hughes. But he had the puck on the string all night long. As we said, 31 minutes and 38 is the amended time on ice. 6 shots on goal, 9 attempts, picks up another point, and helps the Vancouver Canucks to a victory. So he could be a star just about every night. But there certainly wasn't a better skater on the ice at the Rock tonight. Quinn Hughes is the first star. Pius Suter, star number 2. I liked a lot of the sequence on that opening goal. it was funny because it really wasn't a face-off win.
Yeah.
Nico Hischier actually pulls the puck back, but Suter was able to reach around Hischier, and then he kind of won the second face-off, if you will. He gets it back to the point. Marcus Pettersson walks the left wall.
I think it was a no-look pass.
And then Suter separates himself, a little bit of soft ice there, and Marcus Pettersson, we saw a couple of nice centering passes from defensemen that you don't think of as playmakers. Marcus Pettersson had one forward to Lecker-Mackey in the third period, but on that opening goal, Pius Suter makes no mistake, rips it bar down, his first of what turns out to be two, at least for the time being. And we'll see if that one changes, but if it stays, Pius Suter up to 22 goals. So Brock Besser got to 23, matched DeBrusk the other night. Pius Suter wants in on this derby here. Not going away, so he's just one off the team lead now with his 22nd of the season. Again, bumped up to a first-line center role. That's asking an awful lot of a guy that isn't cut out to be a 1C in the National Hockey League, but we know he'll do whatever the coaching staff wants, asks of him. And will probably find a way to succeed, and he certainly did in this game. So Pius Suter is the second star, and Timo Meier, a couple of goals, 4 shots as well. Scored back-to-back goals, one in the second, his second of the night off the end boards. Bit of a fortunate bounce. Räty let Meier go for a split second, and maybe that's the difference between the NHL and the AHL. You just can't let up. And Meier able to pounce on the loose puck midway through the third, puts the Devils in front by a score of 2-1, and that set off a chain reaction of a whole bunch of goals. So there you go, your 3 stars. Quinn Hughes, Pius Suter, and Timo Meier, the 3 stars. A presentation of Räty YVR, and I'm sure it was hopping as the Canucks find a way to battle back and win this thing. Hey, we're going to be there hosting another Canucks Army viewing party April the 10th. Vancouver at Colorado. Make sure you join us. Experience Räty for yourself, all the big screens. All of the arcade games. You can order off that terrific new street food menu. They've got weekly drink specials as well. Räty, the place to be, 50 West Cordova, Räty. Let the games begin, and let's hope that the Vancouver Canucks are still in the mix here as they work to that viewing party on the 10th of April.
You know, I want to ask you something. First of all, we're going to have to start putting the $sign on Suter's name when we put up those 3 stars, because the dude's going to make a lot of money here. Not entirely sure it's going to be in Vancouver, but we'll see. He seems like a guy that is an absolute coach's dream, Jeff. The guy that is super low maintenance, but you know exactly where you're going to get out of him every single night. Can play up and down the lineup on the middle, but also can play on the wing. Never complains about anything. I mean, is that kind of what your read is of him?
Oh, without a doubt. Like a pro's pro through and through. And you're right. Low maintenance, I think, is a perfect way to describe him. That you don't hear a lot of him.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of him around the locker room, and that's not to say that he's not in there and hanging out with his teammates. I just, there are other guys that get requested for interviews on the regular. He's not one of them. He comes across sort of as a shy, fairly timid guy, but he lets his actions on the ice speak for themselves, and credit to him. 22 goals. Every goal he scores now is a season career high. We know that. But with the 2 goals and 2 points in this hockey game, he has matched his career high. So again, in a contract year, couldn't have done a better job of picking a fine time to reach a career high. Had been to 36 before, and he's at 36 now with 11 games remaining. And as long as Elias Pettersson's out of the lineup, he's probably going to be a primetime guy and get power play time and all that kind of stuff. So, he should be able to get to 40 points and beyond. And then it's up to him and his agent, and he'll have offers and he'll have decisions to make. But I know Rick Tocchet likes him a lot, certainly trusts him a lot as well.
His agent's got 1 client, so it's going to be a payday for everybody.
So it won't be difficult on July 1st to get through to the agent, is what you're saying. Well, it might be. It might be a bunch of teams that are all ringing the agent at the same time.
The Canucks might hope it doesn't get there. We'll see what happens.
Right. But good on him. And, we've said this before on recent postgame shows, where Rick Tocchet has challenged these guys to get to the inside of the ice. Again, Pius Suter's not the biggest guy in the world, but I'm finding him more and more on the edge of the blue paint, banging away at loose pucks. And there he was as part of that wild scrum that found it, off the post. Puck comes through the legs of Markstrom. DeBrusk shovels it. Maybe Suter got a stick in there. Again, I thought Garland's skate was the last thing to touch the puck before it found its way in. But whatever the case, Canucks won't care who scored the goal ultimately. It's the fact that it went in, it counted, and they push this thing to overtime, and they win it in a shootout. So, nice night for Pius Suter. And let's talk about Thatcher Demko. His first game since the 8th of February. I don't know if overtime and a shootout is exactly what he needed. in his first game action in more than 6 weeks. He probably would have been content with a 60-minute performance, although if it ends in 60 minutes, the Canucks maybe are coming out on the wrong end of that score.
Yeah.
So Demko delighted to get the win. First time that he has won in his return from injury this season. His season debut after all the battle through the knee problems in mid-December. He lost in overtime to St. Louis. Then he had the back spasms that took him out of the game in Seattle. He was out for 10 days, came back in Carolina, played reasonably well. The Canucks had 14 shots on goal. They didn't do anything to pick him up that night, but lost to the Hurricanes. And in fact, in the 2 previous instances this season where he's come back from injury, he's lost his first 2 games back. So, that's got to be a boost for him and his confidence. And we talked about some of those saves that he made, particularly off Cotter. That'll test the groin and other body parts, the way he stretched across there and made that save. But on the night for Thatcher Demko, including overtime, 25 shots on goal, stops 22 of them. So 22 saves on 25 shots. And really, the win's the most important thing, but a close second is him just getting through the night. And I saw that they interviewed him on Prime, and he appeared to go the distance in this thing. And we'll see how the body reacts in the morning after a first game action in a while. But he looked. I thought he looked pretty good in this hockey game, and doesn't give him a goal through the first 30 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah. So and was tested. Like there were some opportunities for the Devils. It wasn't a high event hockey game, but no. I think all things considered, you have to call this a success for Thatcher Demko.
Absolutely. Your second point, he made it through the hockey game. I think that was the biggest one for him, and it was probably a win for him too, right? Obviously, that is in the back of your mind. You're thinking about, taking hits, guys rushing you and, maybe giving you a little bit of cheap shots, getting in your grill and stuff like that, but be able to get through, calm in net. I think defensively, if your goaltender's there and that this is your guy, you play with a little more ease, knowing that, your goalie can make saves when he needed to. Shout out to Joey Kenward as well, pointing out that Demko's shootout record's now 11-5. So pretty good shootout record for Thatcher Demko as well. But yeah, I thought he was good when he needed to be. I thought that it was a solid performance for him and one that he can build on moving forward. If the Canucks are going to do this, and it's going to be a tall ask and a big hill to climb, but they're going to need to rely on 2 players right now, and that's Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko.
And Quinn Hughes basically playing as much as Thatcher Demko. Well, not quite, but you get the point. There was a scramble in the second period. It was a 1-1 tie.
Yep.
Devils had just scored, and it was complete chaos in and around the crease of Thatcher Demko, but puck stayed out then, and this game went to the third period in 1-1 tie. It's remarkable how many tight games the Canucks have played in since the Four Nations face-off. We all remember the 5-game road trip right out of that break where they went 1-4 and had a second period lead in all 5 of those games. And then you look at the St. Louis game the other day. They had a lead in the third period there, opened the scoring and led into the second period against the Rangers the other afternoon. And it looked like this one was going to follow that pattern where they opened the scoring and weren't going to get anything out of it. So, again, that's where I come back to this idea that it's a 60-minute game. You play to that final buzzer, and full credit to them, the urgency, scoring twice on this trip with the goaltender pulled for an extra attacker. Brock Besser's a little more dramatic in St. Louis because it was right down to the wire. This one with 36 seconds remaining, but they all count. And, so the Vancouver Canucks find a way to grind out a 4-3 victory over the New Jersey Devils. They split the season series, although the Devils get 3 points, the Canucks get 2. Giving up the bonus point doesn't matter at this stage to an Eastern opponent. And I'm sure this wasn't in the Canucks' mind, but a little bit of redemption after getting skated circles around here in Vancouver back in late October when the Devils scored in the first minute and rolled to a 6-0 win. So much better performance for the Vancouver Canucks start to finish. Yeah. And, best players stepped up and were difference makers in this hockey game. Just talking about goaltending, so Thatcher Demko gets the start, and we'll see where it goes from here. Interesting that Kevin Lankinen was given the night off. They've got 3 goalies on the roster. We all talk about Artur Silovs and no confidence in him, and yet with 3 goalies available to them, they elected to dress Silovs as the backup in this hockey game. So had something happened, or if Demko wasn't able to complete the hockey game, it would have been Artur Silovs. But we heard after the game in New York the other day, Kevin Lankinen battling through an illness, and they gave him the day off at practice on Sunday. I think this is a wise decision. Lankinen's going to play again, even if it's now a rotation or winning you're in. Kevin Lankinen is going to get back in between the pipes for the Vancouver Canucks. So If you have the luxury of not forcing him to dress and go through warm-up and sit on the bench, if he can sit in street clothes, or who knows if he was even in the building, maybe they left him behind at the hotel to rest up. Whatever the case, I think that's wise use of an extra goaltender. If you've got one, it's not often they have 3 goalies available to them on the roster. So I just wanted to point out that Kevin Lankinen was among the healthy scratches. A lot of the guys that were scratched, not so healthy, and we can certainly talk and dig into that a little bit. But a full night off for Kevin Lankinen.
I think that's an important thing. They said that he wasn't healthy. They said he was battling through something, an illness, I think. So when you look at it, don't come to the rink. Don't be around the guys. Stay in your room. Sleep. If you need IVs, we'll get you IVs, because you're like you mentioned, Jeff, you're going to play, whether it is a 1-2 type thing. But they're going to need them both, right? It could be Lankinen's game on Wednesday night or Friday in Columbus. One of the two, he's probably going to play. So good for them to be able to have that luxury to be able to get Demko back into the lineup and obviously get the win there. Ask some people on social after what you like from the game by the lake. Demko showing why he's elite when he's healthy, coming back after a long break and backstopping the team to a shutout win. Ryan says, Pius Suter looking like a 2C, Lekkerimäki looking like an NHL player. Now I will ask you, Canucks win. Demko earns the victory, Jeff. What did you like most about this game?
I guess I like the fact that this team stuck with it.
Yeah.
Like, it would be easy to look at their lineup and say, all right, no Elias Pettersson, no Nils Höglander, 2 of their better players over the last 5, 6, 7 games. Höglander probably a little more than that. I think a lot of people think that the loss to the Rangers the other day was probably the nail in their coffin, and it might turn out to be ultimately. We said that there's a lot of ground to cover here, but as long as they keep winning, it keeps those other teams honest. It keeps pushing. Other teams realize that, Canucks have shrunk the gap, at least for this night. So I like that. And I like the fact that Jonathan Lekkerimäki is going to get opportunities here. Without Pettersson, without Höglander, this kid better play. He better be on the power play. Put him in positions to succeed, and let me see more of that shot. Like, I think this market can get drunk on the Lekkerimäki shot. We know this guy can fire the puck. So 3 goals.
Jacob Markstrom got hammered on it tonight.
Interesting that 2 of his 3 have come on prime games. Scored in Montreal as well. But I just want to see him grow his confidence. I want to see him, if he plays the remaining 11 games here, it gives him a true baseline of the National Hockey League that he can then take into the offseason. He's got to get stronger. We know that he's not the biggest guy in the world. So he needs a big summer here, because there is going to be a job waiting for him day 1 of training camp. Nothing's going to be handed to him, but he has to be able to read the writing on the wall. And that's not knowing what the Canucks are going to do here in the offseason, but they are penciling a spot. There's no question. He is their top prospect. And, if he can pot a few more here before the end of the season, go into the offseason with a little bit of confidence, or, hey, maybe there's a miraculous comeback for this hockey club, and maybe he gets his first taste of National Hockey League playoff action.
I think that for him, the number one thing, like you mentioned, is take the offseason and go put on some size. Do whatever you need to do to put on size. You mentioned penciling him in. I think it's beyond that. I think the Canucks now...
Indelible ink?
Yeah, I think so.
The Sharpie is out?
Well, it just makes doing business in the offseason so much easier, right? You need a scoring winger, right? If Brock doesn't stay, if nothing happens there, you're going to need a guy that's able to do it. This dude's on an ECL, or entry-level contract, and it just makes going about your business so much easier. So for the Vancouver Canucks as an organization, you hope, and this is your message to him, whether what happens, if they don't make the playoffs or whatever, you put on size, you come in, you have the similar type of effort that you did in these final few games that here of the left of the regular season, and you've, depending on what happens with the coaching staff or whoever it may be, but you've got a pretty good shot at making this team.
Robert says, was impressed that Demko was solid in his first game back, looked great. And there was a little bit of a Lekkerimäki breakthrough as well. 3 goals in the National Hockey League, scored at home against the Islanders. That was his first big league cookie, and then 2 on the road in Montreal, and this one here tonight against New Jersey. So looking forward to seeing what Jonathan Lekkerimäki can do with the opportunity. This is a lineup now that is rounded out with guys that have spent most of the season down in Abbotsford, whether it's Nils Åman, whether it's Linus Karlsson, to Räty back in the lineup as well tonight. And then you've got Lekkerimäki, and of course, they're rotating these young defensemen. It was Victor Mancini's opportunity again tonight after playing against the Rangers. I would think we see DP to get back in there probably as early as Wednesday night against the Islanders. I kind of like the way that they're handling the young guys. Give them a couple of games and then sit them down. At some point here, if they are mathematically eliminated, I don't know that Derek Forbort needs to play every game left on the schedule. Like, I think there's probably a night or two that you could get both young guys in there.
Yeah.
You know, if they're eliminated, the premium on penalty kill, like, you can't use that as the excuse to keep Forbort in the lineup. This guy's a veteran. You know what you've got there on an expiring contract. And if you had to sit him down, and quite frankly, it may get to this that Quinn Hughes just can't give you any more. And if they are mathematically eliminated, I wonder if you shut him down. That would be a tough sell for the captain. I mean, this guy's a gamer. He wants to play. I get all of that, but you just wonder how much he's got left to give when you're asking him to play 31 minutes and 38 seconds basically every other night. So.
Yeah. And I think that like you look at it and you say all these decisions are going to be made now for the Vancouver Canucks for them. Like if these young guys are playing well, Victor Mancini can earn a spot, cheap contract. You know, D. Pedersen can earn a spot, cheap contract. That's what good teams do. They're able to find guys within their system or guys that they've drafted that can come up and they can develop, or whether it's trade that, aren't on this big money and be able to go and compete and push your team. You're going to round out guys. You're going to have your big money guys, your Marcus Pedersens, your Philip Ronix, your Quinn Hughes. But for the rest of your defense, you don't have to go out and get guys like Vinny Desharnais, who, no offense to Vinny Desharnais, but it didn't fit here. It didn't work for him. Things didn't work out. I think they're going to stick with the Derek Forbort experiment. I really do. I think that there's a place for him here in the lineup next season. But as far as, getting younger and getting faster, giving these guys an opportunity is huge. And for them to get this valuable experience, Jeff, right in the thick of being in what they are. Like they're right in the middle of a playoff race. So getting that experience, having each game be a playoff type of game is huge for these guys.
Let's get at the stat that stands out. It's a presentation of resurrection spirits. And if you feel like the Vancouver Canucks have been to overtime a few times this year... Tonight was the 20th time this season that they've needed bonus hockey to settle a game. They're 5-11 in games that have ended in overtime, 8-12 now in games that go beyond regulation. So 3-1 in the shootout. The overtime record, I mean, that's going to be one of the stories of this season when all is said and done. But they find a way tonight to grind out that bonus point. But they've played 71 games this year, and 20 of them have gone beyond regulation time. So most of them have been settled in overtime. Unfortunately, most of them have been, Canucks have been on the wrong end. But, we've been spared shootouts for the most part this season. We've seen a couple recently, but really shootouts, just 4 of them over the course of 71 games. So I'm all right with that. I mean, I could live with those shootouts, but, this argument I think about, and we saw what happened at the Four Nations face-off with extended 3-on-3 overtime, you just can't ask Quinn Hughes to give you any more.
No.
On a given night in isolation, sure. But Quinn Hughes is doing this every other night here down the stretch with as many games as go to overtime. Like, you'd be looking at Quinn Hughes playing 35 minutes in a hockey game and then turn around and have to do it again on Wednesday. That's part of the concern here is in overtime, your bench is so short, you're leaning on just a handful of your star players. Well, in the regular season, it doesn't happen on this road trip, but there's lots of nights they would have to play tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Like back-to-back.
Yep.
And then if you're asking a guy to play 35, 36 minutes, and, we need you again to do it 24 hours later with a flight and an early, arrival at a hotel. So that's the danger, I think, of extending. As much as people like the idea on the surface, I do think you have to look at the practicality of it and think, that's just a huge ask of star players at the end of a long season where they have logged a lot of minutes.
Quinn's going to be a part of the PA that votes no for extended overtime.
If he can stay awake for the vote.
Exactly.
There at the end of the table, nodding off. Hey, the Canucks have not had much success against the Devils. This is one of the craziest stats. This would have stood out as well. But coming into this game, New Jersey had won 16 of 18 against the Vancouver Canucks.
Wow.
These are not the Stanley Cup Devils of a generation ago. Like, over the last decade, they've had 2 first overall picks and a second overall pick. Like, they've been bad. And yet somehow have just had the Canucks number, but...
they blow them out at home every time they play them.
Yeah. So Quinn gets a measure of revenge. Jack obviously not in uniform, but Luke was. And Big Brother gets the last laugh on this night. Our stat that stands out, the 20 overtimes... a presentation of Resurrection Spirits, an East Vancouver company offering a full range of small batch distilled spirits from rye to gin to vodka and even a ready-to-pour old-fashioned. And these spirits are crafted using BC ingredients, so you're doing your part. You're supporting local, And, of course, that is more important than ever. They have partnered with our friends to come up with Sakaris and Price Gin, and they've got a deal for you. If you use the code S&P, you get $5 off. You can check it all out at resurrectionspirits.ca. That's the website. You can find out more about the S&P Gin there. You can look at their entire product line, the backstory of the company. And the S&P Gin, it's a limited run here. So once the bottles are gone, they are gone. resurrectionspirits.ca. You touched on it, but we got to come back to the Amazon broadcast was hysterical. Like, it was like they had unearthed this hidden gem that was Quinn Hughes. It was like nobody on that broadcast team had ever seen him play, and they were just, like, every shift blown away by the things that this guy on the Vancouver Canucks was doing. And then, oh yeah, every stoppage, like anytime there was an opportunity to insert some sort of, feature or little promo or whatever, it was more Quinn Hughes. Like, I get it. He is the star of the show, and especially without Elias Pettersson and no Jack Hughes on the other side. So I understand where they're coming from, but the levels to which they took it, I just thought was laughable.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, first things first, the broadcast does a great job of the games and things like that. But yeah, it was a lot of Quinn Hughes. I think for us, we see it so much, so maybe we do notice it a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, he's on the show, the Face-Off show as well, right? So there's stuff like that, and then every stat imaginable, it is Quinn Hughes. But I think that it speaks more just to nationally as a whole, like how good this player is, what the NHL has in this player. It's remarkable. Like, Quinn Hughes is up there. He's with the McKinnons. He's with the McCarrs. He's with the McDavids and the Draisaitl's in that upper echelon of talent. So when you have a broadcast like that, or you have games and people watching and things like that, and you show and profile this player and what he's done, how many stats that he's broken, how many records that he has for the Vancouver Canucks and in NHL history, his name stands alone with Bobby Orrs and Brian Leetches and guys like that who have paved the way for him to go and do his thing. So it is a lot, and it's kind of laughable. It's funny, we were sitting here joking about it, but yeah, I mean, I was like, tell me something we don't know about Quinn Hughes, because there really isn't from the show.
Well, the other thing that I mentioned to you was, like, so many of their highlights are him scoring goals, and that's great. I mean, he's got 17 this year, but that's not what makes him great. Like, that's not his superpower. His superpower is doing the things that he did to Matt Rempe the other day.
Yeah.
Show that on a loop. The goals are gravy, and the goals come out of a lot of the other things that make him the special player. So a little surprised just to see this sort of a highlight pack of all his goals, when you're right. I mean, I guess maybe after all these years, we take it a little bit for granted. So, I want to be careful here, because I've been a guy that says, hey, people out east, they don't see enough of him. Like, Amazon is playing him up as they should, but it was like, because this is the fourth time that they've done a game this year. And
remember the one game I don't think he was supposed to play against
just before Christmas, he was questionable. Yeah, no, that was the first time. But you're right, and they featured him that night. And I guess that by the time we get to the middle of March, and they've done 4 Canucks games, it was just this notion of surprise of how incredible Quinn Hughes is. Well, the secret is out. Guy is remarkable, and he was the first star here on Rink Wide. We check. I didn't even look. Who were the Timo Meier was the first star in the building. Yeah. Pius Suter and Thatcher Demko. So Canucks take 2 of 3. No mention of Quinn Hughes among the stars in the building, but he was the first star here on Rink Wide. Just thought another incredible. It's too bad he missed the 14 games, because I think he was playing at a level that would have had him in the conversation. I don't think he was going to win the Hart, but when you look at value to a team, he's on a pretty short list of.
Well, I don't think there's anyone more. I mean, I really don't think that there's any. You can argue McDavid, but with Leon there, I mean, both of them out. That's one thing. I mean, McKinnon, McCarr can still carry the load. They have also a lot of skilled players on that team, but for this team and what he means, not only offensively, but his play defensively as well. I don't think that there's anyone more valuable to their team than him.
When I look at this game, you always ask me, what do you like, what didn't you like? We talked about Lekkermack, liked the push to the finish, liked the fact that Thatcher Demko got through this game and had his moments. Didn't love Teddy Bluger, I can tell you that.
Yep, I would agree.
Penalty. And it was a little bit of a dicey, I mean, he gets his stick in on Meyer, but whatever, his stick was in the feet, and Meyer, it was a trip at 1-0, and that was the power play that led to the tying goals. Oh, Teddy Bluger, who's been so good as part of the penalty kill, well, he can't help out when he's the guy sitting in the box, but more than that, Jonathan Lekkerimäki does well to respond to the 2-1 goal, ties it for the Canucks on a night when it kind of felt like offense was going to be at a premium. So now it's 2-2, and 2 minutes after that, face-off to the right of Thatcher Demko, and Bluger just lets Erik Haula get away from him. And, we saw a couple of defensive breakdowns the other day against the Rangers that led to goals, and Rick Tocchet was frustrated there. If Pius Suter doesn't score to get it to overtime, the Haula goal is the game winner. Yeah. And, it reminded me of the Matty Beniers goal in Seattle a couple of weeks ago where Elias Pettersson just basically lost the faceoff and then lost his man. So we've seen this from the Canucks a couple of times, but Teddy Bluger had to give you more there. So it was not a particularly good night for, and dare I say, the second line center on the Vancouver. I mean, that's where he lined up on the depth chart. We know that Teddy Bluger is not a 2C in the National Hockey League, but wherever he's playing, and normally I'm not going to knock his defensive acumen. I mean, that's it's his, you'd like a little more pop offensively, but you just can't let a guy get away from you like that in a 2-2 tie and ultimately have him score a goal that puts your opponents in front.
No, and this season, Teddy Bluger's had his games where he's been really, really good, but there's also games where he hasn't been great. And I think that he's kind of been hidden a little bit, right? Now he's got to play up the lineup because they're missing all these centers. So now you get bigger assignments. Now you're going up against other teams' best players in matchup roles, and you got exposed there, right? And I think that he's going to learn, obviously, without Elias Pettersson for the next week, of what to expect playing as a real number 2C on this team.
At 5-on-5, the shots were 6-1 for the Devils with Teddy Bluger on the ice. And again, if he finds himself higher in the lineup in sort of that matchup role against other teams' top players, can he hold his own enough to allow the Canucks to have some success? I guess one way to find out, on to Long Island on Wednesday, into Columbus on Friday, and then the trip wraps up Sunday afternoon in Winnipeg. As we look through the lineup here and just kind of assess some of the other players, shout out to Nils Åman. Picks up an assist on the Lekkerimäki goal. He has 3 assists in his last 2 games. This isn't a guy that you look to generate a lot of offense. He's hanging on for dear life at the National Hockey League level, but trying to prove that there is a role for him on this hockey club. When the Canucks are fully healthy, probably not one of their top 12 forwards in the organization. But again, at a time when top-end guys are out of the lineup, they'll take contributions from anybody. So just want to note at least that Nils Åman has 3 assists in his last couple of games. And he also went 4-0 in the faceoff circle. So, can help the cause there. But the guy I want to talk about is Aatu Räty.
Yep.
Or Jarkko Räty.
Yes.
Aatu Räty playing his first game since January 31st, the night that JT Miller was traded, was forced into the lineup then in Dallas. Went back to Abbotsford, has been playing well, leads the Abbotsford Canucks in scoring, and got the call again here with Pettersson and Höglander on the shelf. Gets plugged into the lineup. Aatu Räty plays 12 minutes and 7 seconds, so not a ton of ice time. We talked a little bit earlier on the 2-1 goal for the Devils. Räty lets Timo Meier get away for a split second, and he knew it. When you saw the highlight there, he recognized that he was slow in reacting.
Yep.
But what is the one skill that can set Aatu Räty apart from other centers in this organization, both in the NHL and the American Hockey League? It's his work in the faceoff circle, and he came to work tonight.
Dominated.
7-1 in the opening period, and then as a tight game unfolds and he doesn't play as much, not as many faceoff opportunities, but he won 9 of 11 faceoffs.
Yep.
And yeah, it's a little thing, but
little thing's a big thing.
But it's a bigger thing when nobody else on the team can win faceoffs with regularity. And so, that was one of the things we said as this team was struggling a week ago in the faceoff circle. Like, why wouldn't you bring him up and give him an opportunity? Well, it's taken some key injuries here, but Aatu Räty is going to get a chance. And, every shift starts with a faceoff, or at least from a stoppage, they start with a faceoff. I guess you change it on the fly. There's no draw there, but he's going to get opportunities. And again, this is something I think that he's probably had some help from Manny Malhotra, who was a face-off ace in his days in the National Hockey League. So learning from Manny down on the farm, bring that to the National Hockey League, and that's going to gain him more opportunities. And we see him get way down low in that crouch. We've seen him flip the stick over to try to win draws on his weak side. Hey, whatever it takes. This guy seems to have the knack for winning faceoffs. So absolutely, I like that part from him. Do all faceoffs lead to good scoring chances? No, but you'd much rather win faceoffs and start with a puck than not. So for a guy who hadn't played in the National Hockey League in 6 or 8 weeks, certainly didn't look out of place in the circle.
Yeah, and I think you and I have done these shows and are like, when is Räty getting the call? Like, it's about time. But, I mean, they're also playing pretty well down there in Abbotsford. They want to keep their lineup intact as well. And, obviously because of injury on emergency basis, makes his call. And you're right. When you start with the puck, it is the little things that, help you stay in the NHL lineup. And if he's one of those guys that, maybe he's not going to be relied upon for his offensive prowess or his defensive abilities, he can win big draws. And things like that go a long way. He's a guy that might only play 10 minutes a night, but if he can go out in the defensive zone and win a draw late in the third period, I'm not saying that they're going to do that right away in the next game, but they're definitely going to look at the tape and say, wow, this guy actually was really good in the dot.
All right, I'm just watching some sort of behind-the-scenes video as the Canucks come off the ice, celebrate in the locker room with guys that weren't playing. Looks like Kevin Lankinen was in the building.
Okay.
So he wasn't sleeping back in the hotel. But he didn't play, didn't dress for the Vancouver Canucks, but there to congratulate the guys that did play for the hockey club, and they beat the New Jersey Devils by a score of 4-3 in a shootout. All right, rink-wide presentation in part of the Pacific Toyota dealers. And right now, I want to take a moment to tell you about the Toyota BZ4X, 100% electric. It's backed by the peace of mind knowing that it's a Toyota and that spark of joy you get when you pass gas stations knowing that you don't have to stop where everybody else is pulling off the road to fill the tank. You get the added perk of being able to access HOV lanes when driving an EV, even when you're alone in the vehicle. And it is packed with the things you want in an SUV, like cargo capacity. It can fit all the kids, all of their toys, all their sports equipment, you name it. Can handle any terrain, so it can take you from the city to the slopes or wherever your life takes you. And if you choose the BZ4X, you can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives. And right now, you can finance a 2025 BZ4X from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. I don't know if Sheldon Keefe's going to be terribly happy with his New Jersey Devils. This was their third straight loss. They let a lead get away against Calgary the other night, lost to Ottawa.
Didn't he call out
John Kovacevic?
And then who had a terrible game?
Kovacevic, the Devils took 3 penalties. He had all of them. Twice he put the Canucks in the power play, and then after the Holla goal, there was a little scrum there with Forbert, and he got a penalty there as well. But got the stick up into the face of Kiefer Sherwood. Look, the Canucks are short-staffed. I get that, but we saw it in New York the other day, saw it here as well. Early in the hockey game, a chance to extend their lead, and I don't care who it is. Like, these guys have all been on power plays at various levels to get to the National Hockey League. You should be able to throw your 5 most skilled guys out and have them work the puck into a position to generate a few scoring chances. The first power play of the night was dreadful. The second one, they had a lot of perimeter puck possession. Had a couple of sticks explode as well. Brock wound up for the one-timer. His stick went flying. I think Quinn Hughes on the other side had a stick break as well. So maybe a little unfortunate, but that was in the third period when the game was sitting there and an opportunity to take a 2-1 lead, and didn't do anything with either one of those power plays. So, there were moments in this game, or in these games here of late, where 1-goal games or tied games, power play, you just would like to see a little bit more. But maybe that's asking, I don't know, maybe we're just past that point now with who's in the lineup, who's not in the lineup. But dare to dream that the power play can get things figured out.
Well, I mean, they moved it around well. They just didn't shoot the puck.
Yeah.
And I think that's the age-old thing that when we sit here and talk about it. I mean, I didn't like that, after playing so well and, scoring some big goals in the last few games, Brock Besser's only shot of the game came in overtime. I know, and
I didn't think
quiet.
I thought DeBrusk had a little more hop, although when you look at the final box score here, Jake DeBrusk with 2 shots, 5 attempts, so around the puck a little bit more. DeBrusk got a nice setup to Nils Åman on the doorstep. Åman had a couple of whacks in the second period. Again, when it was 1-0 and it could have extended the lead, I think one of the Devils defenders got his stick in on the second opportunity to help Jacob Markstrom. Whatever the case, and we should mention, just because he was a solid Canuck for a lot of years, but boy, it has been a struggle for Jacob Markstrom since coming back from a knee injury in January. He has 1 win in his last 7 starts now. So
and his goals against is through the roof.
Devils are going to the playoffs. I don't think they have to look over their shoulder, but if they fritter away a bunch of these games here, if somebody behind them can get hot, maybe. Whatever the case, like Jacob Markstrom's got to be careful here. Well, they're getting to the playoffs. I'm not so certain that he's going to be the guy.
That's what I was going to say. That, in its sense, is going to, light a fire under him. But you saw after the game how pissed he was, breaking his stick and what have you. But you're right, Jeff. I mean, they're going to the playoffs. These games are not meaningless, but they're not really there. And you want to feel good about your game going into the playoffs. If Jacob Markstrom has a couple more stinkers, they're going to go to their backup,
Jake Allen.
Jake Allen. Jake Allen's going to probably have us run of games where he looks at it and says, okay, I can be the guy now. And can I be the guy game 1? It's going to be a pretty big decision for Sheldon Keefe.
Well, and look, Jake Allen's a experienced backup, guy that has playoff games on his resume. It's not like you're turning to a rookie who hasn't been there and done that. So, I mean, I know this is a Canucks postgame pod, but I think a lot of people here keep tabs, at least on Jacob Markstrom, and you want to pull for him. I mean, we've seen him when he's at his best. He can be a terrific netminder, but just really struggling to regain that form after his season was interrupted. I saw somebody comparing it to Ryan Miller in his first year as a Vancouver Canuck, where he got hurt in January. And remember, Eddie Lack ended up playing in the playoffs. And
I remember that.
Miller just never really got back to the levels that he had been at earlier this season, or in that season. So maybe some sort of comparables there for Jacob Markstrom. But we'll hope that Markey finds his game again here with 3 weeks to go before the Stanley Cup playoffs begin. And it looks like the Devils are locked into a matchup with Carolina in the opening round, although again, I say that if the bottom was to fall out, I suppose things could change there. Only one other game on the out-of-town scoreboard that really affects the Vancouver Canucks in this chase for the wild card spot, and they're getting a little help right now. Detroit leading Utah by a score of 3-1. I'm not sure that Utah is going to be there when all is said and done, but they're sort of in the mix still as the Canucks are. So Canucks help themselves on their scoreboard and getting a little help right now as Detroit has a 3-1 lead on the Hockey Club in Salt Lake City.
Nice.
Pretty light night around the National Hockey League. We'll talk a little bit more about the Canucks' next opponent, the Islanders, who were in action in one of the games that's already complete. Dallas shut out Minnesota by a score of 3-0. The way that St. Louis is going, Minnesota better be careful. It's not out of the realm of possibility if St. Louis doesn't cool off. Not only will they claim the playoffs, but they could be the first wild card in the West. They're going that well, and Minnesota has stumbled a little bit here. All right, so a quiet night around the National Hockey League tonight, but things will pick up in the days ahead, and that'll lead us into our Bet365 line of the night. What have you got your eye on?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, you mentioned the St. Louis Blues, so I really do like the Blues. I like the Blues again at home against the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, that should be a win night. Vegas Golden Knights, Wild have to go now back home after being in Dallas. Vegas Golden Knights should be able to take it to them there. And I like the Ottawa Senators over the Buffalo Sabres. So those three, some pretty good odds at 332. If you want to take it. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, Jeff. Every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner. Face-off hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between. It's amazing. Whatever the moment's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app and use code NATION to get in on the game. You must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly.
Vancouver Canucks played responsibly.
Yes, they did.
And they end up winning by a score of 4-3 in a shootout. Just before we preview what's next on the road trip, fourth stop out of 6 games, we'll take them to UBS Arena in Belmont to take on Bo Horvat and the Islanders. We learned prior to the game, and a little bit of a surprise, because after the game on Saturday, Rick Tocchet didn't really have an update. On Sunday, no sign of EP40 or Nils Höglander. And then today we find out, not only are they not playing, they've been shipped home off this road trip. So they're going to miss 4 games at the very least. But when the Canucks come off this road trip, they only have 7 games left on their schedule. Do we know anything about anything about either guy and their status and the nature of their injuries and what's going on there?
Yeah, I think for Elias Pettersson, I think the initial diagnosis was at least a week. So because of that, they wanted to get him home, let him look at their doctors here in Vancouver, and he's going to do that and going to get the care that he needs. So I think they play on the Wednesday after they come back from that road trip. Yeah. So an extra day. Maybe he skates on his own. He's going to have his conditioning, do whatever he wants, but he's just not going to play. As for Nils Höglander, it's an interesting one there, Jeff, because the only time that you and I talked about it, the only time that we can really think that there was anything, when he had that hit in the first period of the game against the New York Rangers, right? I think it was
Borgen.
Yeah.
And he drilled him. I think Borgen's visor ended up cutting, and we saw Borgen suffering the after effects there on the bench. But I wondered about that too. Like, I wondered if Höglander maybe got the worst of it and just didn't know it in the moment. Who knows? The Canucks haven't given any sort of update or indication. Patrick Alvin guesting with Amazon Prime in the second intermission. I thought maybe we would get a question at the very least to the GM about updates and nature of the injury and timelines. Not that we probably would have got a deep discussion going or a whole lot of information there, but he wasn't asked. So anyways, we shall see. But time is ticking. 11 games to go. So we'll have to wait to see if and when we see those guys again this season. I think we will. Yeah. I think we'll see Elias Pettersson for sure. Okay. Nils Höglander, we'll see what happens there. All right. Well, the Canucks know that they're going to see Bo Horvat on Wednesday as they take on the New York Islanders, who are fighting for their playoff life on the other side over in the Eastern Conference. And in fact, massive game tonight. They were at home to Columbus. Islanders had a 3-1 lead and ended up losing 4-3 in a shootout. So the Canucks were winners on the road in a shootout. The Blue Jackets were winners in a shootout on the road. Now, controversy here because the Islanders thought they had won it with 10 seconds left in regulation. Goal was called off, overturned. They go to overtime, nothing done there, and then to a shootout, and CBJ ends up winning. So the Islanders are a point back of Montreal for the final playoff spot, and they're collecting points here. They're 3-0-3 in their last 6 hockey games, so no regulation losses in the last 6. 7-3-3 in their last 13. So they're playing well.
Bo's playing well.
But lost in overtime to Calgary the other day, lost tonight in a shootout, so they're letting bonus points get away. But, Bo's been on fire. He has 4 goals in his last 6 hockey games. Yep. So leads the team in scoring with 48 points. Not a massive total. The Islanders don't score a bunch.
No, they don't.
There are some reasons there. I mean, they traded Brock Nelson to the Avs. Anders Lee leads the team. He's got 25 goals on the season. Matthew Barzal's been limited to 30 games. He's not available right now. They got the worst power play in the National Hockey League.
That doesn't surprise me.
12.4% coming into action tonight. I didn't look to see what it did. I find this one interesting. Their penalty kill, when you look in the league rankings, the Islanders' penalty kill is 30th at 71.9%. But Patrick Waugh went off the other night and said he doesn't want to hear anybody telling him how bad his penalty kill is. And he's not wrong. Since Christmas, their penalty kill's 8th in the league. The problem is before Christmas, it was like 63%. And so, look, they're starting to get some goaltending while shorthanded, and it just seems like guys kind of got embarrassed, I guess, and some professional pride kicked in. Whatever the case, it feels like every year the Islanders are sort of right there around the playoff bar. So, I don't know if you ever get comfortable in those situations, but a lot of their guys and they're a veteran group. They've got some experience there. One of the interesting stories around this Islanders team, Mark Gatcomb. And that name may ring a bell. He spent the last 2 years in Abbotsford. Just as a depth guy in the Canucks system who really was never going to get a look from the Vancouver Canucks, but signed with the Islanders in the offseason. This guy's got 5 goals as a 25-year-old rookie who's sort of been a late bloomer and a late arrival to the National Hockey League, but has found a home there on the island with, as we said, Barzal out of the lineup, but traded Brock Nelson. They've asked some of their role players to step up and play a little bit more, and Mark Gatcomb, of all people, is making the most of his opportunities. I love those kinds of stories of guys that chip away and toil in the minors for a while, and I don't know if it'll be a Mark Gatcomb revenge game on Wednesday, more likely a Bo Horvat revenge game, but anyway, it's just a cool story to see a guy that has plied his trade, college guy that worked his way through the ranks and is now getting a chance in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, the Islanders are a little bit of a mess. They had Adam Boquist playing on the wing, who's a defenseman. So and picked up an assist. Yeah. Maybe he's going to need to change his position here a little bit. But anyways, it should be interesting. I think, look, it's a big game for the Canucks. It's a big game for the Islanders. I think with the way that the league is going right now, there's so much parity. There's so much competition for those final wildcard spots, both in the East and in the West, that guys get excited for every single game now. Every game's important. They're not just games where, you can go in and kind of mail it in as they kind of have been in the past. So it should be fun, and we'll be here for it post-game.
We will indeed. That's coming up next. Bo Horvat had an assist in the hockey game, so he's up to 49 points on the season. Was stopped in the shootout. He was the fifth shooter. A chance to extend it for the Islanders didn't happen. Adam Fantilli, the only goal scorer in that shootout. So interesting, the Canucks' next two opponents. Rick Tocchet can watch this game tape and do some pre-scouting of his next two opponents because the Canucks will take on the Islanders Wednesday and then CBJ on Friday. The trip wraps up in Winnipeg on Sunday. All right, that is going to do it, I think, for us on a night that the Vancouver Canucks push to the final buzzer, get the equalizer late, and then they win it in a shootout. Make sure you're following us on all our socials. If you're watching us on the live stream, you can see them there in front of you on the screen. Take your pick or take the package deal and follow us on all of them. And, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Rate and review. Leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on this program, what you like. As Irf always says, what do you like, what don't you like? Just tell us what you like. How about that? Let's leave it there. But certainly subscribe to our YouTube channel for Rink Wide Vancouver. 2 goals from Pius Suter. He's up to 22 on the season. Jonathan Lekkerimäki with his third of the year, and Lekkerimäki with the winner in the shootout. A successful return, a triumphant return. Thatcher Demko. Be interesting to see how the goaltending goes here over the remaining 3 games on this road trip. And, of course, what does Quinn Hughes have left? That's going to be something to watch, just dialing it up more and more the deeper they go here down the stretch. But almost 32 minutes of ice time in this one for the captain tonight. Yeah,
I think the goaltending is going to be strictly up to Thatcher Demko. They're going to see how he feels and see if he can go and wants to go and needs another day off, and see what the situation is with Kevin Lankinen here. I expect to see Demko in one of the next 2 games, and we'll obviously see what happens with Kevin Lankinen. And like you mentioned, Quinn Hughes. Do we have another 30-plus minute night in? I probably would put the ice time right around 31 minutes if you want to hit the over/under there.
It's been fun to watch, and you just marvel at what Quinn Hughes is able to offer up on a nightly basis. Again, figures in the scoring on that tying goal, so finds his way onto the score sheet, contributes in so many areas for the Vancouver Canucks. Vancouver Canucks pick up their first win on this road trip. They're 1-1-1 now after the overtime loss in St. Louis, regulation loss to the Rangers at Madison Square, but they get it sorted out and they win it in New Jersey. 4-3 is the final. Atsu working hard behind the scenes, helping us get this show up and running, and we appreciate all of his help. For Irf, you're back with me on Wednesday, so we'll do it all again when the Canucks take on the New York Rangers, or the New York Islanders, rather. That's going to do it for this episode of Rink Wide Vancouver.